On tonight's episode of Phinside The NFL, it's night 2 of the Miami Dolphins content creator panel voted on by you, the fans. I'll be joined by Omar Kelly, Alf from 3 Yard Per Carry, Kyle Krabs, and of course, Neal from Fin Too Deep. So do us the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. We got a lot to talk about tonight. We'll talk about Tua, training camp, and everything Miami Dolphins related. Let's get into this.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, that open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go! What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one, and tonight I'm joined by an all-star cast. And I mean, we'll start it off, gentlemen. I know, we all create content, or we're all journalists up here, so there's never a lull in the off season. But technically, there's a lull in the off season right now, and I want to thank each and every one of you guys for joining us tonight, because hey, the fans voted you guys on, and this just shows you guys are about giving the fans exactly what they want. So I appreciate you guys for coming through. Hey, how you guys feeling? I mean, we're about a little under a month away from training camp starting. Neal, how are you feeling?
I'd feel a lot better if I didn't see that Jeff Darlington video, I guess yesterday, but no, all good, man.
That wasn't even new news.
I know. I'm fine.
Tua said it the day that he talked. It's like,
I think the reason why people are thrown aback a bit is a couple weeks ago, Jeff Darlington went on that same show and told everyone it'll be done basically by mid-July. Now he's coming up and saying, I'm reining that all back, that optimism in, and he's basically pulling back. I think that's why people
he said mid-July was what he first said.
Yeah.
I mean, it realistically, there are, and I hate to begin this process.
Start it.
There are 3 deadlines in my mind. The start of training camp. It's not done then. Tua probably is going to say, hey, enjoy team periods without me. Let me know when you guys figure it out. Then we got the start of the exhibition season. You want him to do work. You kind of need him to get involved. Then you got the start of the regular season. If we get past that, like, enjoy playing on the 5th-year option. We're not even at the first real deadline yet. So what's the motivation? I mean, how many of us has done the negotiations? What's the motivation to sweeten your offer right now?
Yeah, no panic for me until training camp, to be honest. Honestly, there's a month from now to camp, so a lot of progress can be made between now and then. And if both sides want it bad enough, they'll find a way to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, my only question is, what will Tua do when they play hardball with him? I mean, I initially thought, okay, he's too nice of a guy to hold out, and or hold in to sit out the offseason program. And then he did a pseudo, okay, I'm here and I'm only doing 7-on-7s. Enjoy your team periods with Mike White and Skylar Thompson. It was mediocre. So the offensive players were like, yeah, why are we working if Tua's not working? So, like, can you do that in training camp? You really can't. But Christian sat it out. Xavier sat it out. This is the new business in the NFL. You hold in because you can't hold out because they're fining you. I think it's like $5,000 a day.
Yeah.
And technically, people don't really realize this, but in the new CBA, all you got to do is show up for work. You don't have to participate in work. You just walk through the building, you're good. So you just hold in. Christian showed up for 3-4 weeks and did what he wanted. You can't find him, but he's taking a political stand. Tua could do the same thing. Will he? I don't know.
I think he's going to at least hold in minimum when this starts, if he's not paid, for sure. He just did it at OTAs. He'll probably do it all over again. Okay, I guess we're hopping right into it. Alf, Kyle, your guys' thoughts on this situation right now? Do any one of you guys see this lingering into the regular season?
I thought it would get resolved before training camp, and I completely agree with Omar. I was talking about this on my OnlyFans show. There are realistically 3 deadlines. You have the start of training camp, the start of the preseason, right before the first preseason game, and then the week before the Jaguars' opening day game. And I think each deadline presents new problems. If he's not signed before training camp, then just like Omar said, you're not going to get a guy who's going to be participating on 11 on 11. And I'm pretty damn certain he's not going to play in the preseason games without a contract. Yeah. And then once it gets to the regular season, I would venture to guess, I know what I would do. What I would do is I would say, hey, we're going to try to win a Super Bowl here. I'm going to try to throw 40 touchdowns. And at the end of this season, I want to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, or you send me to Las Vegas or New Orleans or anywhere else.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Alf, one thing to consider with those 3 deadlines is how many quarterback deals get done between now and those deadlines, right? Does Jordan Love get signed and complicate things even more?
Yeah, because everybody says, oh, it's not about the money. It's always about the money, but it's usually at this level of money, kind of like with Jimmy Butler as well. It's what the money says about you, because I don't think Tua cares about buying an extra Lamborghini or an extra house in Hawaii.
It's a Bentley truck, sir.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
it's the respect that comes with it, right?
It's the respect and the status that comes with getting paid along with your peers.
But if that's what Tua's obsessed about, or if that's what he's concerned about, then he's doing it for the wrong reasons. And I'm of the opinion, for me, if I'm Tua, my focus would be on the guaranteed money. I want the highest level of guaranteed money. You can tell me whatever the fake number is, and you could tell me, you can make him average $55 million for all I care. The back end of the backload the deal, make it all fake money. Nobody cares. Nobody's looked at the Trevor Lawrence deal. It's trash. It's like, if Tua wants to sign the Trevor Lawrence deal, I'd be like, please sign it. Like, please, I beg you to sign it, because it's probably the worst deal I've seen in a long time. Everybody's like, oh, it's $200 million guaranteed money.
It's not, like 142.
No, it's not. It's 100, like 42, 43. I'm like, and the final 2 years. Now, will he potentially get that money? Yeah, after the contract is restructured a couple of times, but like, who the hell is paying him like $80 million a year?
Yeah,
like, the quarterback price is not going to raise that much at that point. And then he hasn't even proven he's really good. But anyway, if Tua does want to sign that deal, and hey, well, I'll give you $200 million in fake money or potential guaranteed, possible guaranteed. Okay, if I'm Chris Greer and Tua, you want that deal? You want that deal as your benchmark? I give you the exact deal. I give you a $1 more.
$1 more.
I give you $1 more. If you want that deal, let's do that deal. And I promise you, they won't do that deal.
Yeah, if I'm Tua, I want to be paid along with my peers in my draft class. Meaning, I want more money than Jalen Hurts. I want more money than Justin Herbert.
Okay, so let's get Kyle's thoughts on this. But before we do, I just want to throw something out. I did for you guys. Okay, so if you were to take Trevor Lawrence's money and you were to take Goff's money, their actual guaranteed money, like Omar's talking about, and you put it over the term, they're making about $28.4 million in real money per year. Joe Burrow's making $29.3. So there's only like $1 million difference in real money. I mean, I started asking the question, are they at like, if we're talking in those terms, are they at like 24, 25, and that's where the hiccup is? I don't know. But Kyle, let's get your thoughts on this, and then Omar can rebuttal you.
Yeah, I'll say this about the whole big picture thing. Deadline spur action, right? And I think you look at last year's quarterback market resets with Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson They both signed in April right before the draft, right? That window came and went. It's done. The next like big wave of contracts like Justin Herbert and all them, they signed in mid-July. And I understand that they signed a year ahead of where Tua is at with their contract extension. So like it feels different, but just from a calendar year perspective, it's not like Athletes First and Chris Greer are talking on the phone every single day for the entire offseason. And negotiations are just that herky-jerky, right? There's communication. They talk amongst themselves. It's a very fluid and dynamic conversation that exists. As far as the cash flow perspective, I think one of the things that's really interesting about some of these contracts that might be a part of the sticking point is the year one cash, right? Because Jared Goff signed the contract that had a $73 million signing bonus, right? Like the year one cash is buco, and that's how you get the year two and year three cash that's high 20s, low 30s, because it all averages out. So as we're figuring out where Tua lands, I can't imagine there's that much divide on like the total value or the average value of the contract from average perspective.
I think that's more of the issue than it is a signing bonus. Steve Ross, I think he easily, if you give Tyreek $50 million, why would you not give Tua 50 plus? He's got the cash. It's not like he's some of these other owners where he's not liquid. And this is quarterback. But I think there's more. I personally think, and I have not heard this, but I personally think the holdup is the guaranteed money. And I mean, any agent worth his salt knows that really the guaranteed money is the only thing that matters in these contracts, except for their fake little average per year. And I'm sure they'll fluff it and make it look like Tua is a $50 million quarterback, but what is he really making? He's probably going to make something along the neighborhood of $42 million throughout the course of whatever is guaranteed. And then they probably will maneuver the back end of the contract to when they can restructure it and get what they want out of it to help create themselves some cap space. But I don't think it's the signing bonus that's the issue. I mean,
there's just such a wide range because like Joe Burrow's was 40, Jared Goff's was 73.
Joe Burrow's was 40 because the Bengals are cheap,
right? And
they don't have any money.
But then Justin Herbert's, because he signed in year 3, his was 16 because it was technically like the rookie years of the old contract. So you just kind of look through.
So the Chargers are also a cheap organization that don't have any money.
So from Tua's perspective, going into his floor is higher because his only remaining salary is the 5th-year option, which is a higher figure than what they were. So it's like, okay, do you dump that guaranteed money like you're talking about, Omar, into the signing bonus and take 1.5 years worth up front? Or do you go more Joe Burrow 40, 45, 50-ish as signing bonus and kind of have a more even cash flow? And when it's guaranteed money like that, I think that can be kind of tricky for them to work through too.
Here's the interesting thing that you said. I'm glad you brought that up. And I love this conversation with you, Kyle. Burrow and Herbert signed 7-year deals because they signed those deals going into their final year of the rookie deal before they get their 5th-year option. The 5th-year option was worked inside the deal. Jalen Hurts signed his deal in his final rookie season
because he didn't have a 5th-year option.
Because he didn't have a 5th-year option. He got a 6-year deal. When they did, what's his name? The wide receiver, Jalen Waddle's contract. He went into his rookie deal, which is where Tua should have been, had the 5th-year option triggered, and he signed a 6-year deal. Me personally, I believe that Tua will probably get a 6-year deal, not a 7-year deal like Herbert and Burrow.
So this year plus 5
because you're tacking on the 5th year, right?
This year plus 5 years, and I think he probably, if I'm to his camp, I'm looking for 4 years of it completely, 4 years of it guaranteed, maybe 3 fully guaranteed, another with an option year in 2026.
Do you think that's the problem that they're at right? Do you think that's another hiccup right now? Is the structure because I think a lot of people would agree maybe if it's 5 years, tacked on 6. I know what you're saying, but after the 3 years, you get that out. I mean, agents are going to balk at when you try to attach, especially with quarterbacks, playtime incentives. They're going to balk at that kind of stuff. Do you guys think structure and protections might be another one of the hiccups? Because I think it's guaranteed money and potential structure here. Do you guys agree with that?
I think structure could be a holdup in the case of, and I saw that Kyle was talking about this. Jalen Hurts' contract structure could be something that the Dolphins might want to do to keep, kicking this can down the road.
Why would Tua do that?
Precisely. And I'll tell you why it's probably a bad idea for Tua. That structure, although it's very team friendly, and yeah, you're going to get all this money. It's going to look pretty on paper. It's going to look really nice in the newspaper, and it's going to look great on that lower third on ESPN. It's going to trigger a lot of short-term capital gains every single year, which is another minus 16% on his money every single year. So it's actually a tax on his total money, actual cash paid every single year. So who knows if that is the holdup right now, that Greer and Shore want to roll out that Jalen Hurts structure, and they're saying, "Wait a minute, now you're taxing me."
Waddle, by the way, I know the different cap resources have different things, but Over the Cap has the Waddle contract, and the first 3 years of it, it's a minimum base salary, and the rest of it is a roster bonus or an option bonus that is automatically prorated out throughout the life of the contract. So that's
Jalen Waddle's going to get a very nasty letter from the IRS somewhere around March the 20th every single year, and he's going to say, "I have to pay what?" And yeah, he'll revisit it with his agent pretty soon.
Sometimes guys prefer those bonuses because those bonuses are paid in Florida as opposed to your weekly paycheck, which is paid in wherever you're playing, and then they get taxed out of that as well. I mean, that's just technical stuff, but players really don't care about that. They just care about the money that goes into their paycheck. To me, I personally think the sticking point is the guaranteed money, because once you get to the guaranteed money, everything else, once you get past the guaranteed money, everything else is just rounding basis at that point. If I'm the Dolphins, I'm probably not offering more than 150. If I'm Tua, I'm probably seeking about 170. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is you meet somewhere in the middle. And when I say that, I'm saying fully guaranteed money. You could throw on injury guaranteed and all that kind of foolishness. I only really
fluff it.
To fluff it. Anybody who's obsessed with the average per year for Tua's contract, you're just following fool's gold, because it's not real. Tyreek has averaged for $30 million a year. His paycheck has never seen $30 million a year. He's got duration of his career. He's going to make $24 million a year. These contracts are so fraudulent. It's incredibly insane. And I condemn all of my peers for continuously reporting fake numbers on contracts.
The big numbers, yeah. And that's what the casual fan gets scared of, because that's what they don't look into the cap like all of us. They just don't do that. So when they see that big number, they take it at face value. They don't actually do the research. That's just, and there's a lot of people in the media, they're going to be talking about like the Florios and such. They'll be talking about the annual average. They won't be talking about the real money, because
Florio is probably the only mainstream member of the media who actually goes into
I'm just using him as an example.
Because
he was the attorney, and he knows to read the fine print in the first place.
Yeah.
So, okay, let me ask you this. All right. So, given everything we just covered, to you, in your mind, what is a fair market value deal for the Dolphins and to come to a conclusion to? We'll start with you, Kyle. What would you view as a fair market deal for both sides?
I'll keep this focused on the guarantees, since that's where we're talking, and that there's kind of three separate tiers as far as guaranteed at signing, right? And, the Trevor Lawrence has practical guarantees that are effectively the option bonuses years down that guarantee 2 years from now. But from a guaranteed at signing perspective, you have the Deshaun Watson deal, which is in a league all of its own, because they foolishly gave him a 100% fully guaranteed $230 million contract. Not counting that, it's Joe Burrow at 146.5 guaranteed at signing. Trevor Lawrence, 142 guaranteed at signing. Lamar, 135 guaranteed at signing. Justin Herbert, 133 guaranteed at signing. Nobody else is above 113. So,
Lawrence is at what?
142.
142, yeah.
142 at signing.
But they said 258 of it is that fluff
Right.
money we're talking about.
It's that future guarantees in future years. For Tua,
what's Goff at? What's Goff at?
Goff's guaranteed at signing was 113.6.
Okay.
So that's kind of the next one down, and that's the big divide. Is there's this $20 million gap in guarantees. I'd want to see Tua's contract to get up into the 130 plus in guaranteed at signing. And if there's more guarantees beyond that, then however they want to sort that out, that's fine. But like, I think to give him what's effectively equal to 3 years fully guaranteed at signing is a fair market relative to where these other contracts are checking in at, and not lowball him and put him into the Goff at 113 or Jalen Hurts at 110 kind of stratosphere. I would want him up into that second tier of guaranteed at signing.
Neal, where would you be at with that?
Why don't we go 124? Just a reminder, we haven't won a playoff game in 24 years, right? Now,
love it.
I'm right with Kyle. I think that what Kyle said is spot on, right? Like you don't want to kind of insult him and put him in the golf tier, but around that 130 to 135 million mark, I think there's got to be some harmony there. I think those are good numbers. It takes care of your quarterback. You're not setting the market, but it's a fair deal for Tua, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Alf, where are you at on this one?
I think the floor has to be, like I said, slotted with his peers, and that's the floor. That's where we're working up from, which means more money than Herbert, more money than Hurts, and equal money to Burrow, and we're moving on up. So I'm with Kyle completely. 135, 140, and we're pushing toward the top money earner on that list.
Omar?
I have Burrow at 146.5. These are things that I researched a long time ago, but I could be wrong.
So you're right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To me, the way that I look at this contract, if I'm negotiating it on Tua's behalf, is I got my 23-1, I got my 43, my franchise tag, because that's what you're threatening me with. You want to continue to threaten me again. I want to tack on the 51.6. The franchise tag me twice. Give me that Kyle Cousins treatment. So it brings me at 117.7. Then I want $40 million in my next year contract, just because, hey, that's fair. Would you pay me if I'm to a $40 million a year of my salary? Okay, I want that guaranteed. So I'm at about 150, 156. I want 156. That's what I'm asking for. 4 years of guaranteed money. You could fluff up the rest of it and make it look however you want to look. I think it's probably going to be a 6-year deal. But to me, and this is where I'm sitting if I'm the Dolphins organization, who am I bidding against? Who am I fighting against? Media perception? I already showed you I don't care. I'm gonna drag this out. They're gonna talk about me like I'm an evil villain because of how harsh I'm treating Tua for the next 4 weeks. Because we got nothing else to talk about. What do we have to talk about? Do you hear any conversation about Jordan Love? Last year, Jordan Love didn't even get his 5th-year option. They gave him half of that money and said, prove it. And the nation's like, okay. And here we are. The Dolphins are getting flogged for, how dare you make Tua play on the 5th-year option? Well, you just made Christian Wilkins a 3-year captain, the pillar of your team, did everything right, play on a 5th-year option.
I think that's part of the problem, though, Omar, because everybody's got the scar tissue of the Wilkins saga, and then he leaves, and nobody really wanted him to leave, and they're like, oh, you should have got that deal done. But if you told everybody 12 months ago, hey, we're signing Christian Wilkins to a contract extension for $27 million per season, everybody lost their minds.
Yeah, it's true.
Everybody would have lost their minds.
He's right.
I agree with you. My thing is, and this is where the play, this is where I think it could get ugly, because the team will be behind Tua. Imagine if every press conference, everybody ends it with pay Tua. Yeah. Like just, hey, I feel like I'm doing great at quarterback. Okay, by the way, pay Tua. Like and I have covered this team for 16 years, and trust me, I've never seen a team behind a quarterback. I've never in my career. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm lying. Chad Pennington, Ryan Tannehill. Not Ryan Tannehill. Never Ryan Tannehill. Chad Pennington, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like when Tua stole the team from Ryan Fitzpatrick, or really was handed to him, everybody on the team's like, yo, Fitz is our guy. Like, what are we doing? And, and obviously.
And then Gesicki started getting the ball and shut up real quick. That's what happened. And everyone in this fan base, pay him $10 million. Pay Gesicki $10 million. Where is he now? Well, that's what I say. Trevor Lawrence can't even elevate Calvin Ridley. Tua Tagovailoa is over here. People are on X betting me that Lynn Bowden Jr. is going to have a better year than Albert Wilson. Malcolm Perry. People are falling in love with Malcolm Perry. People want to pay Mike Gesicki. What have these guys done since they left Tua? That's another thing his agency's saying there at the table. I mean, look at what he's worked with. This guy's literally turned chicken shit into chicken salad regularly, and that's another thing. Well, you got a guy like Trevor Lawrence who gets all this money, who we can all agree is probably falls into the 12 to 16 range, while Tua's in the top 8. I think Tua's top 8.
No, Tua's not top 8. So does Tua. No, Tua's not top 8.
Over the last 2 years, he's top 5 in every major statistical category.
Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, C.J. Stroud, Brock Purdy.
We're really giving C.J. Stroud top 5 after one season.
That was a phenomenal year. Who wants to argue that?
There's a reason why the term sophomore slump in every sport exists.
That's fair, but I mean that was a phenomenal year.
And if you would have given us Cleveland in the first round, guess what? We wouldn't have a 24-year playoff drought right now.
And so that's already what I call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, that's 5. Then we got Purdy. Hurts, Herbert.
Hurts
didn't even throw you Aaron Rodgers.
Herbert isn't better.
Rodgers isn't better right now.
I'm not going to argue Herbert isn't better. I can live with that.
Hurts isn't better. You can't sit here and say Hurts a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa.
I think he's achieved a little bit more. He was an MVP. Didn't he win MVP?
I think he was second in the voting.
To Rodgers?
Yeah, Rodgers is.
How many touchdowns did he throw that year?
He ran for some. I mean, I won't argue you the positioning of them. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, Tua's in the.
We're starting to get into the stretches, Omar. That's what you're starting to name.
No.
Herbert's a stretch.
Okay,
you know what I'm saying?
But if we can sit here and say, okay, would 17 teams pick this quarterback over Tua? Purdy, yes, 17 would. Hurts, yes, 17 would. Herbert,
I don't agree with that.
30 of 32 would, even though I don't agree with it. 30 of 32 would on tools alone. Aaron Rodgers, nobody knows what Aaron Rodgers is going to be or do, but he's clear. Come on, Aaron Rodgers could be the MVP this year. We don't know. We have no clue.
Or you could spend the whole season smoking crack in a cave somewhere.
Yeah, and Tua could be the MVP this year too.
Let's be
well, that's my whole point. Based off of what Kyle was saying earlier, expand on the Wilkins thing. They asked Wilkins, prove to us you're a pass rusher. What did he do last year? So Tua, stay healthy. He stays healthy. He leads the league. But what enough people aren't talking about is we've kind of escaped the MVP top 3 voting the last 2 years. In 2022, he got hurt. He was in the MVP conversation. Last year, until week 17, we were in the conversation for number 1 in the AFC, not just AFC East. And he was in the MVP conversation.
Then got whacked by Lamar.
Yeah, but I mean, Lamar's got as many MVPs as he does playoff wins, and he's been in the league since 2018.
I'd take a 2-time MVP on my team. I'm just saying.
Well, I'll tell you right now, guess what Harbaugh would probably say? I'd take Flacco on that Super Bowl run over anything you can give me with Lamar Jackson.
Really?
He won a Super Bowl. Did he win a Super Bowl with a pocket quarterback or a mobile?
That was ass.
Lamar, the pocket quarterback will never die, especially in the playoffs.
I like quarterback tiers better than rankings because I think you start arguing about 7 versus 8, 8 versus 9.
The margins are so close. If you told me Tua was in the 8 to 12 tier, I think that's a perfectly fine, appropriate estimate of where he falls in the pecking order for NFL quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's about right.
And I think you nailed something.
I've done my optimistic list, and he ends up 8th, and I've done my pessimistic list, and he ends up 11th. And then I might put Aaron Rodgers in front of him if Aaron Rodgers gets out of that cave that he's smoking crack in, and he has
It's
a great
not crack,
season.
it's mushrooms. Like
ayahuasca. He's doing all kinds of
Microdose.
hallucinogenics.
Listen, I know, but do not forget, Marino had a good year when he came back from that Achilles, but we all started to notice the decline, and he was like 31, 32 a couple years after. This guy is 39. Yeah, but this guy's 39, 40.
But Marino had a botched Achilles job.
Okay, so let's even that up with 8 years, 9 years on top of that.
5 months later. I mean,
Omar, how old are you? Does your body feel the same when you get out of bed at 31 as you do at 40?
I also don't do mushrooms and all kinds of stuff. Like
you can't do them before the game, so I don't know what the plan is. This guy's not Maradona over here. I don't know what the plan is.
Hey, listen, if he comes back and he's MVP level Aaron Rodgers,
it ain't happening.
He wants to stick it to the world. Come on.
Yeah. And I want to win $1 million. Doesn't mean tomorrow I'm going to wake up and win $1 million.
He's Aaron Rodgers. Like, are you really gonna? People put him the list. There's a list.
Oh, and I'll say this. Okay, he's Aaron Rodgers. Okay, so let's talk about his last year in Green Bay. Up until that concussion, Tua Tagovailoa was far and away the best quarterback on that field in that game in December when they faced off. And let's not say he had a better line in Green Bay, right? He had weapons. Like now, obviously, did he have a Garrett Wilson? But I get that he had Devontae Adams, didn't he?
Not that year.
No, he's gone. Right?
Not that year.
Yeah, he's gone.
He had the running game. He had a really good offensive line.
Yeah,
number 3 ranked line in football.
Yeah, so I mean, and Tua Tagovailoa before that concussion in that game was on the verge. But if he wouldn't have got concussion, we might have blown him out.
Yeah.
I think
at one point in that game before the concussion, Tua had 229 yards passing on 9 attempts.
Yeah, he was ridiculous. He was good that game until he got the birdies knocked out of him. Right, he was good until he started seeing stars. So I don't know, man. And again, we're coming back from such an injury here. Like, I don't know. I can't buy into this Jets hype. I think it's nonsense the people that are calling them a playoff team. I think it's nonsense the people that are calling them a Super Bowl.
And what's supposed he is elite still. I mean,
hey, guess what? You're going to have to be, because Tua in this offense regularly put up 30+ points on that defense. So you better be elite when you face Tua and the Jets. Just like you called Josh Allen the daddy of the Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa is the daddy of the Jets and Bill Belichick. So I don't know what else to say. You know what I mean? Like all these people that want to, Neal talks about all this time, all these people in these spaces that want to celebrate Tua potentially getting a deal. What's there to celebrate? He's whipping all of y'all, and he's going to figure out Buffalo sooner or later. We should have swept them in 2022. If Trent Sherfield, Tyreek Hill, or Josh Boyer did their job in that game, we sweep them in 2022.
That is the fan in you talking like they are not
Tua Tagovailoa was great in that game. And people told me he couldn't play in the snow. People told me he couldn't play in the cold, and he was awesome.
Did he take an L or not?
Hey, there's 52 other players on the roster, and we learned at that game.
I love Tua, but yeah, you either do it or you don't, and they didn't do it, and they lucked up to win the first game. Let's not pretend like they didn't luck up.
I think Tua was better than Josh Allen in that second game.
Okay.
And that was in their house, so anyways.
Until you start beating Buffalo, and Buffalo should come back to the pack this year. They should. They basically left the man without any weapons. And
that 2022 season, and really in 2023 as well. 2023 was just Josh Allen being Josh Allen, and he wasn't all that great in the second game. But in 2022, that was all Josh Allen. Those 2 games. The first game, he was terrible. He actually had 5 passes that hit 2 Miami Dolphin hands 5 different times. So you can make an argument he should have thrown 5 interceptions, and he did have a fumble at his own 5-yard line. But in that second game, in the snow, he basically beat the Dolphins by himself when they were down by 8 points late in that game. The Dolphin defense had no answer for anything that Josh Allen did. And that's something that he does regularly against the Dolphins. That is what has to stop if they're going to turn this around. Because
that 3rd and 17 conversion before the end of the first half should never have happened, ever.
Usually, if you watch some of the closer games that the Dolphins have played against the Bills, it's not the roster that's beating them. It's one guy. It's Josh Allen being Josh Allen, because I think he's the second best quarterback in football. And
agree.
Miami has never had an answer.
Who argues
for
that?
him.
Who would argue that? Like
Some people say Burrow. I've heard Burrow a lot.
Take Josh.
Yeah.
Josh. For sure.
I think the notion that the Bills are going to have this drastic drop off because they lost Diggs is kind of overstated. Not to say that they won't miss Stephon Diggs out there, but as long as you got Josh Allen can go in the phone booth, put on a cape, and beat you by himself. And I don't like the Bills, but I respect Josh Allen. I don't know.
You got to give a quarterback weapons.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the Dalton Kincaid show this year. I think you're going to see a leap in Dalton Kincaid's game this year.
Yeah, tight ends and running back.
Shakir's a nice little player for them. I know he was really productive. He led the team in receiving the final 10 weeks and had less targets than Stephon Diggs did in the same stretch. So, but he's a guy who wins in the slot. I think that's what's really interesting when you look at Buffalo is all the other guys that they added with Valdez-Scantling and Keon Coleman, these big body guys on the outside. They took Chase Claypool, right? Like they got these big height, weight, speed guys on the outside to try to win with leverage on the outside and stretch the field. But they really leaned into the running game last year too. And they got a really good offensive line. And I don't think they had a single starter miss a game last year. Like all 5 of their guys up front played over 1,000 snaps for them last year. Imagine that world that we would live in if we ever got anything close to that. But that continuity for them really showed up down the stretch when they ran the table because they ran the heck out of the ball. And with Josh being able to do it too, it's an added layer that's just it's really tough to stop.
Yeah, and he only does it in the second half of the season. But I also want to point out that they lost some offensive linemen as well. But I agree with you. If you have 5 guys,
a big loss.
Yeah. If you have 5 guys on your offensive line playing 1,000 snaps each, like you're going to be a net. I think the Dolphins. I'm of the opinion it's going to be hard, and this is a good segue for you. It's going to be hard for you to improve that offense because, like, it was humming last year with no interior offensive line. It was still humming. No third receiver. It was still humming. No legit tight end target weapon. It was still humming. And it only stopped humming when you had 3 of your top weapons injured. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Are you guys comfortable enough with going off of what Omar just said there, and kind of what Kyle said, if I think we all agree, if we could have had Isaiah Wynn and Connor Williams for the full season and Teron dealt with what he dealt with, we probably all would have been a lot comfortable. But are you guys comfortable right now that they haven't really, what was their biggest depth upgrade? Jack Driscoll to that interior line. Are you guys comfortable enough after the history of Wynn, Armstead, Aaron Brewer's even missed some time already in OTAs. Are you guys comfortable enough with the depth of this offensive line heading into the season, given the history of some of these players across it?
No,
not at all for me. I'm sorry, Alf, go ahead.
No, I'm not comfortable with what they've done on the offensive line, but they're telling you what they think of it. All right. They're basically telling you that their system and their ethos is what's going to dictate this offense and not the play of the right guard or the play of the left guard. And I think that's a mistake. I would have made upgrades, at least slight upgrades if I could, but they're leaning into what they started here last year. And now they're really leaning into it because there's no Robert Hunt. They basically just saying, we don't need a Robert Hunt. We could get by with league average play at the guard spot, at either guard spot and in the interior. And we're going to be fine because this offense is going to work quickly. It's going to work with a lot of mesh points. And we're talking very quick route combinations with very fast wide receivers. That's not really going to ask them to get into pass pro too much. I charted a lot of games last year. There was a game last year, which is the first one against New England. Okay, you remember that game? Dolphin offense was okay in that game. They scored 24 points. The New England defense was actually pretty good. I think they finished 6th in the NFL.
Yeah, they are good defense. Yeah.
Okay, and they were good to start the season. And in that game, I charted it. They had only 6 actual pass pro plays.
Pass drops.
Yes. And in those 6 pass drops, they allowed 5 pressures and 2 sacks. That tells you all you need to know.
That was healthy. Yeah. That was without Teron and everybody else was healthy. I can't remember what point.
Wasn't the only game
and that's when Austin Jackson was kind of feeling himself after his debut. After his debut, and
that was first New England.
Yeah, week 2 game. Teron
Matthew Judon dominated him every single pass pro snap in that game. They had no hope against the New England pass rush, which is pretty good. It's not the best in the league, but it's okay, especially with Judon healthy. And they only had 6 true pass pro drops, and they were a disaster. They're leaning into that even more this year. So they're going to be quick. They're going to get off the spot. It's going to be a lot of mesh points, a lot of crossers, a lot of.
You think we see another? I believe it's time in the pocket last year was 2.3 seconds, and
they'll repeat that again this year.
2.1.
They'll repeat that again this year. That's the plan.
So let me ask you this. Okay, before we move on to someone else, Alf, in your mind, for the last 2 years, one of the things we've been talking about on this channel is the counterpunch from McDaniel. What happens when he's figured out? What happens when he would see Belichick for the second time? What would you do this year when that quick stuff, that counterpunch? What would your counterpunch be when teams start adapting to that quick stuff like we saw last year?
Well, you made some improvements. Your improvements are that now you have a third down weapon and Odell Beckham to play in 11 personnel. Your other improvement is that you got Jonnu Smith to throw design passes to. And the other improvement is that you have a second year of Devon Achane, and you drafted Jalen Wright, which I believe, this is off the top of my head, I could be making this up. I think they ran for 2,300 yards last year. Run for 2,600 and throw for 42. Throw for 400 yards less, but run the ball for more yards. Have a more balanced offense. Run the ball more, especially with a lead. And you got the running backs to do it now. And I love the draft pick of Jalen Wright, not because I had him so high on my board, but this is essentially telling you we're going to save some of Mostert's legs for December this year. And we got a guy that could take all of the garbage time carries, because there were games last year where Mostert was getting a carry up 3 touchdowns, and he should never carry the football up 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
See, what I also kind of took the right move is something I think we all hope that they did to the interior offensive line. They looked at Achane, they looked at Wilson, if he's still here, and they looked at Mostert, and they're like, the last couple of years, we haven't been able to depend on these guys come December, January. If we add another, I don't want to use the word elite, but high caliber weapon back there, it's going to sort itself out. There's going to be one of these guys we can rely on, to your point about saving Mosert's legs by the time we get in December and January, because as much as I talked about how you need to win from the pocket in the playoffs, you need to win out of the backfield, running the football in the playoffs too. What are your thoughts on this all, Kyle?
So we're at a couple different fronts here. I think from a weapons perspective, I like the Jalen Wright addition for a couple different reasons. One of the Dolphins' most explosive personnel groupings last year was 2 backs on the field at the same time, but not Alec Ingold. He created a lot of so not a fullback, 2 backs with Achane and Mostert. The versatility of Achane to be able to get involved in a number of different ways, utilize him in your motions, have him involved in the passing game. But Jalen Wright's involvement in the passing game really pops on film at Tennessee in pass protection. And I think that's where, if you want to get into some drop back passing stuff, having another back that's effective in drop back pass protection for your 6-man protections can help you, because the Dolphins, a lot of times, they wanted to run play action and they're doing their wide zone tracks and they're keeping the tight ends in and they're keeping the backs in, and they're trying to max protect with 8 guys, and they're sending 2-3 guys out on the routes. And if those are capped, your play's kind of dead. So if you can get your 6-man protection units better with a back that you trust, and Jalen Wright did that at a high level at Tennessee last year, that can help you get another eligible out to help space the field even better. And then the other thing with him is that Tennessee offense has some unique parallels to Miami from a light box count, right? They're a very college spread-ishy offense with a lot of guys that are in stacked alignments outside the numbers, like really wonky splits that you'll never see in the NFL. But they got a lot of 6.5-man boxes and 2 high safeties because of how they space the field. Well, Jalen Wright killed that with inside zone. And so much of Achane and Raheem Mostert, I know Raheem Mostert had a lot of yards after contact last year, but a lot of that was wide zone tracks. So to be able to have a back that's 215 pounds, that has the explosiveness of these other guys, but his bread and butter is between the tackles and inside zone as compared to outside zone, I think that's a nice foil to the run game to kind of help us with some of the things that we're talking about having a second pitch for whenever your wide zone outside runs start getting shut down and you build your plan off of that. That's a change of pace that I think they can try to exploit this year.
What are your thoughts on the offensive line depth?
I think they have a fair number of guys that are going to be on 53-man rosters. I wish the ceiling of the 5 that's going to start was better. And that for me is whoever's at that right guard spot. Isaiah Wynn's on bided time. It's just a matter of time because 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 or whatever it is years, you get about halfway through and he's no longer available. So to know going in, okay, you got Isaiah Wynn. If he's on the field, you feel good about him as a starter. How long are you going to have him? Right? You don't know. And I like the tackle depth. So I'm a little less worried about the tackle situation because Kendall Lane was really solid for you last year. And then you add Patrick Paul, right? Mm-hmm. We hope he doesn't have to play, but we know the realities with Teron Armstead. But the interior group, there's a guy sitting out here in Greg Van Roten that played for the Raiders last year that I think is probably the only free agent left that I would consider an upgrade. Like anybody else who's out there in free agency, I kind of put him in the same bucket with Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg and Jack Driscoll. And at that point, like, why sign another guy? You've got 3 of guys that are kind of that caliber of players. So I think they have depth. I just wish their floor of their best 5 was a little higher, particularly at that right guard spot.
Omar, where are you at on this?
I love offensive line. Mike McDaniel knows that. I've put my faith and trust in Butch Barry. He's earned that. Mike is consistently preaching that the guys will get better because they're more aware and understand our system better and understand what our needs are. So, anytime I bring it up or anytime we address the offensive line or anytime we talk about what's there, their point or Mike's point has always been that's what coaching is for. Now, I love what Kyle said, where I wish the floor was a lot higher on all these guys. Robert Jones, who probably going to end up starting 6 games. Lester Cotton's still around. Lester Cotton, would he make 5 other NFL teams? I don't know. To me, the real case study for whether or not this offensive line is going to be able to do enough is going to be Aaron Brewer. And I got to admit, I didn't have the time nor the interest in exploring his film when he got signed. I was just like, okay, all right, cool. Center's addressed. And then I literally walked out there to OTAs and saw he's about this big. And I was just like, holy crap, this is the smallest offensive lineman I've ever seen in my life on a professional level. Now, I have not seen him in pads yet. I've seen him on film. Great in the run game. A little bit of a problematic player in pass protection. Obviously, he's going to be a help player a lot. But, so to me, it really comes down to, can he get the job done at center for 17 games? And then if he can't, you're moving Liam inside the center. That's a downgrade. He's already, if he's lucky or good, he wins the starting right guard spot. You're going to lean on Jack Driscoll to start no matter what happens to Liam, whether he gets beaten out or Liam's in at center or Liam has to go play left guard. I like what Kyle said. I just don't know why Van Roten is the answer. I've looked and I was just like, there's another guy from Seattle. Can't remember.
Haynes? Talking about Phil Haynes?
Yeah, Phil Haynes. Who I thought probably fits a little bit better. But then we're at the point where, and I understand this because it's been lectured to me, we're at the point where anything out there is throwaway stuff. Like every team's at 15 offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Right. So
I think to Kyle's point, Van Routen, I think we'd all have a lot more confidence in Van Routen at right guard than Liam Eichenberg.
Yeah, but you also don't have an investment of a second-round pick and a third-round pick in Liam Eichenberg.
Yeah, but who cares about an investment you made
Chris
3 or
Greer
4
does.
years ago? We're
Chris
trying to
Greer
win a
does.
Super Bowl right now.
Chris
See,
Greer
that's
does.
the kind of stuff. See, and you know, I know you guys brought up Phil Haynes right now. See, that's the type of, to Kyle's point when he's talking about, you know, how Van Routen is the only good thing out there. Well, there were other guys out there when they brought in, you know, Phil Haynes, like Andres Pete was already proven, right? And he had played next to Armstead. And there were other guys who were still out there, and they decided to bring in a Phil Haynes. You know what kind of vibes that gave me? Are they really taking competition serious for Eichenberg, or are they just trying to hand him a job?
Hand him a job. But
I
also
don't think
keep
he's
in
guaranteed
mind,
to have a job to start the year, though. I think
he's going to get pole position. He's going to get pole position.
Yeah. I'm praying. Listen, I'll tell you right now, I'm hoping Jack Driscoll wins the battle. So at least we have a somewhat, I don't know, we're not leaning on a UDFA to be the backup center right now. Like, what's our depth we've talked about our depth at guard. What's our depth at center? You got to literally be praying on Liam Eichenberg's downfall. So you have Driscoll start, and we at least have, you know, a swing guard and a backup option at center that's played some meaningful snaps, not hoping on UDFAs like Meyer and such.
Now, I will say this. I like Greg Van Roten, but there's another name out there that's he's a free agent. He played with the Giants last year. He has ideal size, 6'4", 310. Mark Lewinsky, yes.
Yeah.
That's who I like. You know, he will not have the pressure that Van Roten is going to have, because I'm pretty certain that Van Roten is the type of guy that would have a start guarantee. Okay. I know that a couple of seasons ago, Dolphins were kind of in on Graham Glasgow, and I think that they tried to pitch him on competing, and he wasn't interested in competing. He got the job in Detroit, had a monster season, and then sure enough, they rewarded him with an extension this past year. I like Mark Lewinsky. He won't have the pressure of having to start right away at right guard, but he's a guy that could push somebody at right guard. He could push a Robert Jones. He could push a Liam Eichenberg. Of course, I would just solve this by just offer a contract to Greg Van Roten. I know he can play, and I know he can step in right away if need be. But if you want a cheaper option that's a really good scheme fit, Mark Lewinsky is probably your best bet now.
But boys, doesn't this bug you that we're sitting here talking about bargain bin shopping when we all know we're in a contending window? And if you look at every position other than the depth at the interior offensive line, dare I say this is one of the more complete rosters since the early 2000s?
It's made up of dollar store signings. Like, it's the whole offseason's been like 1.8 million deal. Like, and while they're all good players, and hell, Calais Campbell, Marcus May, Jordan Poyer, like, let's not pretend like they went out there and spent like big money. They did dollar store signings. But
at least they got proven guys on those dollar store signings. We're over here bargain bin shopping on the offensive line with, I mean, the whole narrative is Tua's got to continue to stay healthy, so you got to keep him upright. And you're bargain bin shopping on, you know, for this offense to roll. We can't be relying on Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg, and Lester Cotton to be manning the interior offensive line from weeks 9 to 16.
Hey, they manned it for week 9 to 16 last year.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Omar, because like you think about the losses on the offensive line, and losing Connor sucks and losing Robert Hunt sucks. But like realistically, those guys played 450 snaps apiece last year. You played more than half the season without those guys. And like Omar said earlier on this panel, the offense was still humming until the skill guys got hurt towards the end of the year. So that's the ideology. I don't necessarily fully subscribe to it the way that they do. But they're in lockstep with it, and they believe in it. And you hear Chris Forster, the offensive line coach that used to be here, who had the brilliant flame out, and he's in San Francisco. He had a press conference this offseason, and he said, I tell those guys, go draft the guys who score touchdowns, because the development of what we do, and there's a couple coaching clinics that are out there. You can find some clips of them on YouTube, but it's Chris Forster when he's in San Francisco talking about this same wide zone scheme. And so much of the focus is, look, this is a pass play, but your hat placement as the play side guard needs to get to this landmark on the 3 technique shoulder, because that's going to tell the linebacker that it's outside zone, and that's going to move him and create the throwing. Like, it's that detailed. And that's what Omar's talking about, in the belief that the longer they're in the system, they'll get it.
And to piggyback on what you're saying, Kyle, and I'm glad you brought that up. What most people don't know is probably the biggest influence on Mike McDaniel's career, and he said this on a podcast, I believe it was with Mike Silva, was Chris Forrester.
Mm-hmm.
He spent years in his room learning from him and the run game and learning from him the concepts. And that was and remember, he got this job as what? A run game specialist. He wasn't a QB guru. He was a run game specialist because of what he learned from Chris Forrester. So it's and who is Butch Barry's an understudy of? Chris Forrester. So it's, they believe that you could go get a guy from Publix and teach him the fundamentals and techniques of that position, and more than likely he should be able to get the job done. Do I subscribe to that? No, I don't.
Yeah.
But they have proven it worked. They averaged 5.1 yards per carry last year with trash as the interior of the offensive line.
Raheem Mostert didn't have a 100-yard plus game after Wynn went down.
He also was chipped up and injured, and a lot people don't realize a lot of those guys were on fumes in December, like physically.
But didn't Wynn go down? Wynn went down in the Eagles game.
He went down the third play of the Eagles game.
Yeah.
So hold on.
That's what I'm saying.
Raheem didn't have a 100.
He did not have a 100+ yard game after Wynn went down.
But you did see the emergence of Devon Achane in that stretch because he didn't really get rolling until about week 9, week 10.
Didn't Raheem have a good New England game the second game, or was that the first? No, that was the first game because it was
first one because he hit that home run in the fourth quarter to close him out with the
Kansas City. Okay, struggled.
And Devon Achane's like a freaking unicorn because everyone looks at his size and doesn't expect him to hit the gaps the way he does, and he can.
I think part of that reason, and I'll be interested to see how this plays out this year in training camp, but the guys that were the starters versus the guys that were the backup, they had like very different athletic profiles too. And for the guards on the inside with Isaiah Wynn and Robert Hunt, their athletic profiles are very different than Lester Cotton and Robert Jones, right?
Yeah,
and then Liam was playing hurt. And I think what you really saw down the stretch last year, and I don't know what their answer is going to be. And that's kind of why I'm interested to see what training camp looks like. But the backside cutoff blocks and getting up onto the second level weren't there. So those explosive runs stopped coming at the premium unless Achane gets out there and they run crack toss and they get outside the numbers really quick because that backside linebacker was chasing a lot of those plays that Raheem was hitting for home runs early in the season down. Because Lester Cotton and Robert Jones, they just can't move like the de facto starters at the beginning of the year did. So
Robert Jones is really, really good when somebody's right in his face or trying to jump into the beat.
He's a close quarters guy.
Yeah, he cannot hit the backside cutoff to save his life because he just can't do it. He can't get out there. He just can't get out there to do it. And Lester Cotton is, in my opinion, is not an NFL player.
Thank you.
Solomon Kinley had that same issue too, right? Solomon Kinley.
Yeah, he was slow-footed. He was slow-footed, and he lumbers out there, and it's a skill. That's why certain guys can play special teams and certain guys can't. It's a skill to hit people in space. And the Solomon Kinleys can't do it. Robert Jones can't do it because he can't find people. And Lester Cotton can't do it because he's just not good enough.
Okay, so let's flip on the other side, and we'll start off with Neal here. Let's look to the defense for a sec. A lot of people were questioning this team and Weaver and their ability, how it's going to be. Now we all up here know how the rotation worked on the defensive line in Baltimore, but a lot of the fans were very, very worried about how this team was going to be able to stop the run with the loss of Wilkins. They added Calais Campbell. Are you confident in this defense's ability to stop the run after upgrading that second level? I say it's the best second level we've had since Kiko Alonso was here. Are you confident enough with that front seven and their ability to stop the run? And we'll start with you, Neal.
Yeah, I think it's going to be adequate. I love Anthony Weaver and I love what he brings, but I'm not going to front and say that this is going to be the Baltimore defensive line. We just don't have the type of horses they had with Matabuki, Pierce, Travis Jones, Broderick Washington. But I do think the Calais Campbell sign is a huge upgrade to what we had on that front. I think teams will probably be able to run on us a little bit for sure. I hope that it's not, that we have gaping holes up front. I feel comfortable with Seiler and Campbell. Everything else to me is kind of that Spider-Man meme when they're pointing at each other. A lot of people that are around the same type of skill level players, you're going to try to attack that with multiple players playing, in and out, probably a lot of versatility. But, I don't know. I don't know. I guess that's the one thing I want to see is, when the pads get on, how, are they going to be stout up front? I think the linebackers are definitely better and will cover more ground than we've seen in times past. But that nose guard position, if Teair Tart doesn't have the light bulb come on from now until the start of the season, then I think there's a level of concern there. Is a guy like Linval Joseph, who's out there, maybe a potential fit to shore up some depth there, just throwing a name out there. But I don't know. I don't think we're going to confuse anyone with like a 2000 type Baltimore Ravens defensive front. I don't think it's going to be awful. I think we'll probably be against the run somewhere maybe in the top, around 14, 15 in the league.
What do you think, Omar? Because I know you were doing cartwheels when we added Calais Campbell.
Oh, love the Calais Campbell signing. I think he's probably people don't understand this. Not just one of the top edge setters in the NFL, still at his age, productive sack player, 105, third in the NFL in active players in sacks from an interior position, 105.5. But also the leadership that he brings. What people don't realize is, I'm in the locker room. I know where there are voids from a leadership standpoint. All the leaders on this team are on the offensive side. So who leads the defense? It's not Javon Holland. It's not Jalen Ramsey. It wasn't Xavier Howard. It wasn't Jerome Baker. It was Christian Wilkins. And now, Christian leaves. Okay, Zach could step up, but Zach spent his career looking to Christian to do the job. Now, I'm not saying that these guys can't, but you know what I am saying? I know who can. And Calais has been a leader throughout his entire career. We're talking 17 years of leadership, 17 years of vocal leadership. So I think that that's important. I think he's going to be a 600 snap player. I think Zach is going to be a 600, 700 snap player. To me, who makes up the rest of those snaps? Teair Tart, Benito Jones, Neville Gallimore. What is this other?
Deshaun Hand.
Deshaun Hand.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
He's not wrong.
Jonathan Harris. You need one guy. All you really, really need is one of those guys to say, hey, my career's on the line. This is my last opportunity. Think about this. 2 years ago, was Zach Sealer? Something lit a fire in him. The truth of the matter is most of these defensive linemen, they're one season from being out of the league. Who really wants it? And I have no idea. But I do know that you need one. I watched Jordan Brooks because, as I said, I did not get, when free agency was going, things were just moving so fast. I did not have a chance to sit there and look over plays and tape. And I watched Jordan Brooks this week, watched a couple games, and I don't know if he's that player that everybody thinks he is. Very rangy, good blitzer, likes to hit things head up. But do we have that finger snap instincts? Do we have that ability to finish plays? I mean, keep in mind, this is a player that the Seahawks basically said, fifth-year option, and we're going to pass. And here we are. Yes, he's got a ton of tackles, but here we are thinking that he's going to drastically upgrade this defense, and I just don't know about that. And then the safety position, somebody's got to be in the box to help. And Jordan Poyer, I've got a ton of respect for him. I know he's a dog. I've watched him train at Bommarito for years. I know he's a dog. But I also know if you watch the film and you guys watch film, he's a step slower than he used to be. Yeah. And I watched it at camp, and I'm like, oh, this is not good, which is why Marcus May is here. So And what's Marcus May? He's in that Teron Armstead camp where you're gonna get 7, 8, 9 games out of him before something happens. That's just the nature of the NFL. And when you're here shopping at the dollar store, you can't sit there and complain about hey, we got injured players. Like, well, okay, your roster's made up of injured players. Like, and then people are like, well, why don't we play better in December? Well, your roster's made up of injury-prone players. So I can honestly tell you, unless Calais has been in Europe and got the fountain of youth that everybody seems to be going to Europe to get, I have absolutely no idea if this is going to work for them. And then Weaver, okay, and I've heard his justifications for why things struggled in Houston, and he took the Baltimore job because he really wanted to learn what the Baltimore secret sauce is. And truth of the matter is, if he learned Raven's secret sauce, okay, then we're good. Because in my opinion, if the Dolphins got some Raven secret sauce, oh, it's Super Bowl. Like, you can forget about it. They have a toughness and a physicality that we've never. When have we had that? Like Zonka.
Well, it seems like that new Mike McDonald defense might be the defensive version of the Shanahan offense, where if he produces in Seattle and it produces here this year, it might become the new trend. They might be picking people from that tree. Alf, what are your thoughts on the front seven are you confident in their ability to stop the run this year?
Well, I am a big fan of Jordan Brooks. I wanted to draft him with the 3rd first-round pick in 2020. He has the versatility that Jerome Baker just did not have. I think he's an upgrade over Jerome Baker, and I was a big fan of Jerome Baker. David Long was a revelation last year. We liked him when we signed him. Anthony Walker is going to be that sub-package linebacker. I like what Jordan Brooks is bringing to the table in the sense that they're going to be able to play a lot of their different fronts from different places. And he's going to be able to line up in the B or the A gap and still be able to reach out and to scrape off of the tackle. So can he also play, as a fill linebacker, like they tried to play Jerome Baker? Yeah. Jerome Baker couldn't do that. He can. While you still have David Long that can do both as well, although not as good as a scrape backer as Jordan Brooks. I think his versatility is going to upgrade that unit much, much more. And remember, you had Duke Riley last year as LB3. He's LB4 now. So that's an improvement. Yeah, on the front seven, I agree with Omar. They're going to have to find somebody to find snaps inside. Neville Gallimore, his contract was really interesting. They essentially just handed him a suitcase with $1.2 million in it and told him, hey, play football for us this year. So he's making the team. Because if they cut him, Stephen Ross is going to place a phone call to Chris Greer and say, you just gave this guy $1 million of my money, and he's not even on the team. So I think he'll play some snaps, 15 snaps a game, 10 to 15 snaps, pretty much the same role he had in Dallas. Tier Tart is going to have to pay dividends. If not, they're going to be looking at that last round of cuts to try to play some zero and play some one shade. Calais Campbell absolutely was spectacular last year in Atlanta, playing essentially like an edge player. I believe it was it Wink Martindale that called him the best 5-tech in the league. This team has been needing one for a while, and I think they got one. That's going to allow them to play a lot of fronts that they couldn't play last year. So that gives me some confidence, but all that confidence is placed in that Zach Sealer is going to be the same Zach Sealer. He can't be playing too much inside, which means that puts the pressure on the other guys, Tier Tart, Neville Gallimore, Benito Jones, etc. They got to find the 30 snaps per game from those guys to supplement the rest. If they do, this front seven will be good, and they'll be able to stop the run at a top 10 clip with light boxes. But they got to find those guys. And if they don't see one in training camp, they're going to have to go out in that final round of cuts to find a guy. And you can always find a zero. The zeros, when they say, quarterbacks don't grow on trees and this guy doesn't grow on trees and that guy doesn't grow on trees. Zeros grow on trees. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. So you could find one if you need one.
Well, just before I get to Kyle, how do you see Benito Jones working out? You see him more pass rush situations because that's his strength?
I don't think he's going to play too much. He's a true zero. He's a 10 snap a game guy, 10, 12 snap a game guy. I would have liked to see John Jenkins brought back as some strong competition at the zero, and then essentially you practice squad one and you play one on Sundays. We shall see. Maybe Brandon Peely is that guy. We didn't see it last year in training camp, but maybe he's, a year later in the system, in a different system that maybe suits him, because they're going to play a lot more even fronts, which is going to help him. So maybe he is that guy that could step in, but we shall see.
He was okay.
He was okay, but he couldn't find snaps on a team last year that desperately needed a zero.
That was under old Grumpy. You can't I can't really sit there and say he just preferred veterans.
By the way, has John Jenkins signed somewhere? I think he did, right?
He's back with the Raiders.
I thought he did.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah,
he's back with the Raiders. All right.
So where's your confidence level at in this front seven's ability to stop the run after Wilkins departed, Kyle?
So I think you can stop the run structurally, right? And we've talked about effectively every name other than Jonathan Harris that's been brought in as far as this kind of collection of talent. Their names have all kind of come up to this point. Alf made the point about the Neville Gallimore contract being a fully guaranteed salary. Benito Jones's salary is also fully guaranteed. So that it's 1.5. It doesn't guarantee you anything, but you can kind of read between the tea leaves and see who they kind of maybe envision based off of, we gave you the fully guaranteed contract to come. So it was Neville Gallimore's and Benito Jones, two very different skill sets. Gallimore's kind of undersized. I know he played on the nose at Oklahoma, and Dallas played him on the nose sometimes, but more as a pass rush specialist. Benito, kind of a double teams kind of guy. And I know Anthony Weaver in minicamp and OTAs talked about the depth and the rotation that they're going to have. That Baltimore defense had one defensive lineman last year that played more than 400 snaps. I mean, they had a bunch of guys that played 350 snaps, 325 snaps, 300 snaps, 400 snaps. One guy, Justin Madubuike, played like 650 snaps, and he was the highest snap taker. So they had a lot of guys that rolled in. So if you're asking me about your ability to stop the run, there's a lot more flexibility here for the skill sets to kind of be front flexible on a week-to-week basis, depending on if you're getting a team that runs a fullback or a team that runs a lot of 12 personnel, or they're going to try to spread you out, run 11, and you can get all these different fronts. And that's where I think the additions of, a little bit more rangy player in Jordan Brooks, who can still take you on head on, as compared to what you've had there at linebacker for the past few years. If you're going to play the different fronts, the stress trickles back to the guys behind you to be able to play integrity in the pass game when you play all the different kinds of fronts. So if you need to play a bare front or a tight front and cover up each one of the three interior offensive linemen to occupy your gap so that you feel like you're well acclimated to fit against the run, then it's, hey, can your linebackers and your nickel take care of all of that space when you get hit with play action passing? And I think that's where I do think Jordan Brooks, I think he's a little bit of a parallel move as an overall player to Jerome, but I think that element of him is better than Jerome Baker. And then the ability to move Jalen Ramsey around that they're going to be willing to do, I bet he's going to live a whole bunch in some of these games as the nickel defender and the guy that's kind of on the hash as the apex defender. And those kinds of changes then give me more confidence that they have enough variety to play fronts on a week-to-week basis to try to structurally fit the run better, because that whole Fangio defense was, we're going to play static shells on the back end. We're going to play the exact same front on 1st and 10 every time. We're not really going to rotate the guys, and we're going to play 6.5 men in the box, and you guys have to be able to figure out how to stop the run. You could get 7-man boxes. You can get 8-man boxes, but that, it all trickles out on the other guys to be able to take care of being a well-rounded unit. And I think that's where the athleticism and the versatility and moving Jalen Ramsey around, those kinds of things can help you and allow you to do that.
Yeah, Kyle, let me ask you let me give you a name, because I here in Baltimore, one of the things kind of going around town is that Broderick Washington has fallen out of favor with the Ravens, and Brent Urban has kind of emerged as the guy who's going to probably round out that rotation with Travis Jones and Madubuike. What are your thoughts on a guy like Broderick Washington as a potential fit? If you remember last year, they signed him to a contract extension, and then he was inactive the next week. He had done something offside the football field to get himself in a little bit of the doghouse with Anthony Weaver.
Mhm.
If he gets released, let's say, and he's available, or if it's a trade for a late round pick, is that somebody you think could provide a little depth and versatility on that defensive line?
Maybe, but I think between Calais, who I think will play all over the place on a week-to-week basis, because
For
in that
sure.
in that Baltimore system in 21 and 22, he did that, right. He was A gap, B gap, C gap. He was out on the edge. He was hand in the dirt. He stood up from time to time. He did a little bit more of that last year in Atlanta, and that didn't really lend to his skill set. I think keeping him kind of compressed down, his head up over the tackler down inside will help. I think Jonathan Harris is that kind of player too.
Sure.
And I think that's a great guy for to be following Calais Campbell around a ton is Jonathan Harris. Obviously, you're going to get into the numbers game. I promise you this group will carry more than 4 interior defensive linemen like last year's team did. It's just if Harris doesn't make the team and you feel like you need a guy who can maybe play a 5 or rush on some interior gaps, like maybe that's when you kick the tires to a guy like Broderick Washington, at least for me. But I'd want to see what Jonathan Harris shows for you and kind of see the Neville Gallimore thing through a little bit more first.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. Finally here, guys, I want to ask you this. All right, give me one player you're going to be watching closely at training camp, and that you would that you would tell fans to keep an eye on, and give me one player you could see as being a surprise cut. And we'll start with you, Alf.
I'll give you the surprise cut first. In the linebacking group, I think Cam Brown is here to play special teams, and I think that they got a lot of specialists for the special teams units, which means that Channing Tindall or Duke Riley could be sacrificed, because I think that they know who their top 3 guys are. Okay. So either Duke Riley and you get some savings.
You got Cam Brown making the team over Duke and Tindall. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think he's here to be a specialist on special teams, and
he's
they
been
got
like a
3
400
guys.
snap a year special, like a core 4 special teams guy for the Giants the last 3 years. And with the new kickoff rules, look, they got to give Danny Crossman some guys that are just designated to play on this unit at some point, right? Like,
yeah.
So
and they give him 3 of them. So
yeah.
So I think that there's one guy in that group that's going to surprise us. It's either going to be Channing Tindall because of performance, let's face it, or Duke Riley because of finances, because they get to save a little money on Duke Riley. A guy that I'm watching in training camp, man, I want to see the dynamic of Kendall Fuller and Jalen Ramsey on the inside, and what happens with Kader Kohou by extension. So I guess the guy that I'm watching in training camp is Kader Kohou. I want to see where he ends up on this defense, because I'm pretty certain that Ramsey's going to be in the slot against the better wide receivers, and he's going to be more involved in a lot of the places where Kader Kohou made some of his money as a rookie. So does that mean that he gets busted down the depth chart? Probably. So I'm interested to watch Kader Kohou this training camp.
Kyle, who's your player to watch this training camp, and who do you see as maybe being a potentially surprise cut?
I'll stay in the tight end room for all of this. I know from a surprise cut standpoint, you had Julian Hill last year who flashed a little bit for you and played about 350 snaps and is a big toolsy guy. And they've kind of been kicking the tires on this UDFA tight end athlete type player for the past few years with Tanner Connor and then Julian Hill. And I think that's a great developmental player, but I think some fans might be surprised when the numbers game comes out and you have to figure out you're carrying a fullback. How many tight ends are you going to carry? I would certainly put Durham Smythe and Jonnu Smith in front of him in the depth chart. And the guy that I have to watch in training camp is Jody Fortson.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of tape, but the tape that you get, he's a big time catch point guy, and he's long, right? And never could really catch on in Kansas City because injuries were always kind of a thing. So never know how many eggs you want to put in that basket. And there's not a big financial commitment here. But if you're looking for Eric Ezukama to kind of take on a little bit of a different element where you have all these smaller speed receivers, and I think Jody Fortson can be a little bit of an extension of that with just how long he is and how good his ball skills are, that I don't think you're carrying 4 tight ends. I mean, they carried 2 for most of the year last year. So if Fortson pops, I think that pushes Hill onto the bubble to potentially be a practice squad guy. I think they'd probably be able to keep him on the practice squad. And then if they do have injuries, that you potentially elevate him a little later in the season.
I agree 110%. I said on the show yesterday, I agree 110% with your surprise cut of Julian Hill because of Jody Fortson and what he offers after the catch, the athletic profile, etc. The player that I would watch, that I'm going to be watching, because everyone's going to be talking about OBJ and is a comma to your point, Kyle. I think Malik Washington's going to ball this season, and I think he's going to look like a baller in training camp. I got really high hopes for this kid coming out of the slot. Omar, who's your surprise cut, and who do you have your eye on closely at training camp?
Great question. I'm actually going to follow Kyle's lead and stay in one specific room. You kind of teased it, but I did want to address Julian Hill. These coaches, they love him. Mm-hmm. Toughest, strongest offensive lineman. Tight end. Studious, and he had a solid OTAs. I'm like, this guy, you can see he's fighting. He's not going down, like a deer in headlights. Nah, he's fighting. Do you think
they could sneak him onto the practice squad if they do come down to that decision?
I don't know. Depends. To me, it depends on special teams role. I love the thought and the concept and the approach with Odell Beckham. That's the one guy I'm going to be watching to see how they utilize him, who becomes a slot, what does it look like, what is his skill set, what are his plays looking like, what's his chemistry with Tua. That to me is the guy that I'll be watching the most. To me, Eric Uzukama, unless he just has a strong camp, I think his days are numbered here. Even though he has a different dimension and body and skill set than everybody else on the team, the light bulb just has not gone on. And I can't sit there and tell you that it's skill. Sometimes it just doesn't connect for guys.
Do you think it's because of a lack of reps, because of the injuries he's put up with?
I don't know. I can't answer that question because we saw a lot of reps during the exhibition season and then he just disappeared. We saw a lot of rolls, then he just disappeared. And it wasn't like he was doing bad in those roles, but sometimes there are things that happen in the classroom that we just don't know. And players get a test at the end of the week about the game plan, the approach, and people don't know this. And sometimes if you don't pass that test, you are not active because they can't count on you. And to me, if Eric Uzukama wants to make this team, and nobody knows what special teams is going to look like, he's got to be a guy that just kills it on special teams if he wants to make this team. I personally see one of the rookies making the 53, one trying to be stashed on the practice squad. So, but Uzukama, to me, he's got to beat out River Craycraft. And we all know River Craycraft does 16,000 jobs for this team, and they've got a confidence level in him that they just don't have in any other.
Because he's got it up here too, right?
I remember, and this will always stick out to me. Brian Hartline told me one time, we were talking about something I can't remember, and he was like, "You want to know the difference between the guys who make it and the guys who don't?" As rookies, as draft picks, he's like, it's always intelligence. He's like, it's no matter what, they could be a superior athlete. And we were talking about Clyde Gates back then. Clyde Gates was a far superior athlete to everybody. But up here wasn't right.
Yeah.
And throughout the course of my career, I've just learned that that's true. The intelligent players are the ones that always shine and thrive and survive and exceed, and then the guys who just don't have it, it doesn't connect, they're always the one that's showing the door. So Eric Uzukama's got to show more up here for him to get that safety.
I mean, and take that to all you Tua haters that keep bringing up that Wonderlic score, because clearly he showed he's got it up here. And you always forget Marino didn't have a very good Wonderlic score either.
Tua had a bad Wonderlic score?
Yeah. Wasn't it like 19? The official number was 18 or 19. Marino's was what, 15 or 13 or something?
Yeah, Tua scored 13. Then They rescored
That was
it.
the
and
false
he,
number. Yeah.
Right, and they rescored it. He had a 19.
Yeah.
Dan Marino, I think, had a legit 13.
Yeah, it was 13 or 15 or something. Yeah.
Have you guys ever taken a Wonderlic score?
Yeah, it's the
A
dumbest
Wonderlic
thing.
test?
It has nothing to do with what we are going to be
I
doing on
have.
the football field at all.
It's
Yeah.
the biggest waste of time in the history of sports.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
It gives you baseline competency, intelligence, problem solving, but if you have a reading comprehension issue, you're not going to do well in it.
Didn't that basketball player end up being a UDFA? He didn't get drafted yesterday in the first round because his
One
Wonderlic
that got a
score
9.
was
He got a 9, right?
He got a terrible Wonderlic score.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
They don't even
Neal.
go to school in the NBA now. What are you talking about? What do you need to pass a Wonderlic test?
Yeah, really.
The Europeans, they don't even go to school at all.
Homeschooled, baby. That's what they got.
Basketball academies.
Yeah, it's true. Neal, who's your player that you're watching heading into training camp, and who would be a surprise cut for you?
The guy I'm watching is going to be Jalen Wright because I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities in the preseason. And, Alf mentioned this earlier. I think there's going to be opportunities for the Dolphins to play certain players, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane on snap counts if they do what their MO has been and beat up those bad teams. And I think Jalen Wright has that look to me of a guy who's going to do a lot with those carries. He's coming into the league with a chip on his shoulder, went a little bit later than he thought. I thought his tape was awesome when I did my draft evaluation on him. I don't know if, Kyle, you shared the same. I listened to some of your feedback, but I think Jalen Wright could be a guy that could end up being one of the bigger steals in this draft in terms of a production output. I have a hard time seeing Braxton Berrios making this roster. He was the bona fide number 3 here last year. When you have Hill and Waddle on the outside and you can't produce, they go out and get an Odell Beckham Jr. I have a feeling that both rookie receivers could make this team. If Taj Washington can show some return capabilities in the preseason, Berrios could be on the outside looking in. And I'll give a spicy take as well. Maybe not via release, but maybe via trade. And Alf touched on this a few minutes ago. Let's just say Cam Smith comes in here and shows the level of talent that made him a second-round pick. We know the Dolphins like Ethan Bonner. Kader Kohou was bad last year. He was really, really bad last year. And now with us bringing Marcus May on, maybe Nick Needham can serve and kind of a jack of all trades in the back of the secondary. If Kader Kohou doesn't look like he did 2 years ago, I could see the Dolphins potentially flipping him for a late pick in camp, or maybe for another player that's underwhelmed at current team. I just think that, maybe I'm being a homer here. I think Cam Smith could be the surprise of camp, and if he is there room for Kader Kohou here?
So another Igbenogany trade coming down the pipeline. All right,
we got to see Cam Smith actually deliver.
Yeah,
first.
I agreed.
Yeah, if everything works out in the secondary, Kader Kohou has lost a job with every single signing that they've made this offseason.
Right. Kendall Fuller's gonna. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, like if I were Kader Kohou, I would not buy a house after watching all of these signings this offseason.
Kader's a tough kid, a good kid. I think that the scheme that he was put in, man, that guy got beat up on crossers. That guy was put in so many roles he had no business being in.
Yeah, he had no business being out on the boundary facing top 5 receivers in the game.
Like,
he just had no business.
Like they were sitting there begging Vic Fangio to let Xavier shadow Stephon, and they were just and like, come on, Buffalo.
I would have paid real money to see one of those conversations with Chris Greer and Vic Fangio as he watched Vic Fangio play his $23 million new acquisition, Jalen Ramsey, exclusively on the boundary for 65 snaps in a game.
Nobody could tell Vic anything, and the reality is Vic was right. They set franchise records with sacks. Going into the Baltimore game, they had the number 4 defense before the entire defense fell apart, and they finished 10th. And I don't disagree with the players where they probably feel like they could have did more if they diversified the defense a little bit. But as Vic will tell you, 1/3 of the NFL runs my defense. What do you know?
I know
worked.
one thing. You
It
finished
worked,
10th.
didn't
You finished 10th, but you couldn't finish off the Tennessee Titans when you're up by 2 scores with 3 minutes left. That's what I know, Vic.
That one felt like actually that one. I recently rewatched that game to watch Aaron Brewer, ironically enough, and man, those corners on the outside were hunting some balls that they had no business hunting.
Yeah,
and just
right.
way out of position.
Yeah.
So I will say just as an observation that I recently had of that game, going back and revisiting, is I think your star players on the outside didn't do themselves any favors hunting the football and got taken for big gains a little bit down the stretch there on that one, which was a bummer.
I remember the X one big time.
There was also one play. There was also one play where they were in quarters and everybody was dropping 12 yards, and Kohou was somehow 26 yards off the line of scrimmage.
There was also a play where what's his name? Hopkins runs a crosser. Jalen has to drop him. Everybody blames it on Kohou. I mean, like crossers. The defense couldn't stop crossers from week 1 to
the whole year. Yeah,
week 7.
The whole year.
And nobody fixed it. Nobody fixed it. So
where you at, Big Vic? Where you at? Where's the Big Vic energy? You gotta
that
fix
Titans game, I pulled those old Kyle Crab videos when you were gulping whiskey. I slept right through my alarm. I missed work the next day. I was so depressed. I was laying on my couch like, how the hell did this happen, man? Like, that was like the first time all
would have won the
last
division
season.
if we finished that, man.
Yeah, that was like the first time I think all season where I was actually really let down by the Dolphins. Like,
how many narratives does that change, man? That game.
Yeah, you know what, Alf? We play Mason Rudolph and the Steelers at home without TJ Watt instead of going into the second coldest game in NFL history against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City.
And I feel good. I don't like saying that they would have won, hypothetical games, but they beat Mason Rudolph.
Omar, you think they lose?
They'd lose.
No way.
Tyreek was at like 70%. Jalen Waddle shouldn't have even been on the field. I watched him practice the week before. He could barely walk. I mean, the day before, the 2 days before, could barely walk, barely move. Probably shot up Toradol out of his mind to even be on the field. Raheem had no business out there playing. Like, they had nothing for you. They really, truly had nothing for you. And it's sad to say that because they have been so good. Hell, I forget what even Achane was like playing with broken ribs. They had nothing for you at the end of the season. And
yeah, but remember, if they win the Tennessee Titan game, they get to rest the Bills game.
I mean, that's what would have been for the division. No,
they would have clinched the division had they beaten the
Cowboys
Titans.
win. With the Cowboys win,
a resting of the Bills game still wouldn't have done you any good because neither would Raheem and Jalen wouldn't have. Maybe Tariq would have been healthier, but it's what game was it? Tariq pulled himself out the game at the end of the game when they needed him. Was that the Claypool play?
He was in and out of that Buffalo game.
Claypool ran the sideways horseshoe instead of the out route.
It's in our history. Let's move on. Tyreek was out. Those guys were soldiering through some really bad stuff, and nobody wants to hear it because it's all Tua's fault. So let's just leave it there.
Can I ask this though before we go? And it's a genuine question. Does anybody here really believe that if you win the wild card game against Pittsburgh and then you lose in the divisional round, that all of these same complaints that you're hearing right now would still not exist about making a deep playoff run? The goalpost would just move.
The new complaint would be you beat Mason Rudolph, beat a real quarterback.
You still have people thinking they're smarter than Kurt Warner out here arguing with them like they know what they're talking about.
And all of us have been Dolphin fans enough to know. Like, it sucks we haven't won a playoff game in 24 years. I'm not saying it doesn't, but we've all been a fan of this team when it was Jay Fiedler winning playoff. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen this team win playoff games. I'll be honest, I'm at a point for me where a couple shallow playoff wins don't mean that much, to Kyle's point, right? Like, if you built this win, and I'm not saying, Omar, I see you squid, I want a playoff win, but if we go this season and we win a playoff game and that's the end of our season, does anyone here really feel satisfied? Because I personally wouldn't. This to me is like the window we haven't had in 20 some years to make a run. And it's easier said than done. Like I know we have to go through Kansas City and the Chiefs, and I still personally think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC. I really do. And like those are the two teams. Like I do think the Dolphins can play with the Buffalo Bills, and I think like Omar said, they're going to come back to earth. And I do think this is the year we're going to exercise the demons. And look, I've been wrong a lot on that, so I might be wrong again. But like the Texans are an up and coming team. They have a lot of talent. They have high expectations. They kind of remind me of where the Dolphins were last year a little bit. But I still think the AFC is going to go through the Ravens and the Chiefs. And what scares me to death to the offensive line conversation we had earlier. Look, I'm biased. I think Jack Driscoll has the best last name in the league, right? But with that said, I watched Chris Jones absolutely dominate John Simpson in that playoff game, and it impacted the Ravens' entire offense. He was on skates. Lamar didn't feel comfortable in the pocket. He was happy feet running around there, not knowing where he was going with the ball. The Ravens just were caught off guard because one defensive tackle just completely every play dominated the line of scrimmage. And if we're going to beat those two teams, it's Chris Jones and the Ravens have Justin Matabuki. And if you tell me Isaiah Wynn goes down and it's Lester Cotton out there and Liam Eichenberg out there, that's where, to me, it's not good enough on the offensive line. There has to be a move that's made. And, we already mentioned the Spider-Man meme. Greg Van Roten, I think, would be a good piece out of anyone that's out there. But, like, that's not Larry Little by any means either. Like, is there a guy that this team can go acquire via a trade to a team that knows they're not playing for anything this year with the extra, they have 9 picks. Is there a guy, they can get out there and get? And the answer is it's easier said than done, especially when it's only not even July yet. But when we get through training camps, maybe with some of these young guys that were drafted emerge and some veterans are made available, I think the Dolphins have to have their finger on the pulse of finding a guy. If it's not Van Roten, I do like Lewinsky just like Alf does. If it's not one of those two guys, they have to. They cannot let this interior offensive line
be the downfall for the window.
I think there's only one name that I can think of right now, and that's I don't think that they extended him yet. Quinnen Miners.
Yeah, that's why I say I agree.
The Denver Broncos are setting up for a tragic season if they're absolutely 100%. Awful at the trade deadline. Maybe they decide they don't want an expensive guard, and then you rent them for a year.
Do you think they would move a key piece like that with a young quarterback?
For a pick, maybe,
Well, Alf,
they've already can't even keep them. Like if they trade for Quinnen Miners, that's a rental. I don't know how you're going to pay an expensive guard when you didn't pay yours.
We chose Hunter Long instead of Quinn Miners. We
also charged Liam over Creed Humphrey.
Yeah. Oh my God! What were you saying, Kyle?
Sorry, Kyle.
Come on, Brian Flores had to draft his Boston College Eagle.
Right.
This is the first year that there's actual real expectations on this Dolphin team, and we talked about what they have to produce. They have to win the division no matter what, and this build, which has probably 2, possibly 3 seasons left in it, has to result in a Super Bowl win. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
This is what it's about, not little victories.
I don't agree with you guys on that. I think that you do have a 2 to 3 year window to win the Super Bowl, but only one team wins it. And show me the player better than Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. Now, if Patrick Mahomes is injured for the year, window's open. But show me.
Omar hasn't only one quarterback, active quarterback in the AFC beat him, and that's Joe Burrow in the playoffs, right? No one else has beat him in the playoffs that's active right now. Tom Brady's not in the league anymore.
He's still so young.
Coming into this playoff, Patrick Mahomes had never played a road playoff game. Well, guess what? Now he's undefeated on the road too.
He's awesome.
See, that's the thing. We're in such a weird. Listen, you guys have all been watching, football for over 25 years. Do you ever remember a 20-year dynasty followed up with potentially another 10-year dynasty right on the heels of it? Like, we are in rare air right now, going from Brady to Mahomes.
You had the 49ers for a very long time in the 80s and 90s.
And then Dallas for a bit.
And they were followed by a pretty strong run by the Cowboys. That's the only thing I can think of. But Patrick Mahomes is
he's he's 101.
We could sit here. This 4-year run has been success. It has been a change.
Sure.
it hasn't been a changing of the culture. I've covered the Dolphins for 16 years. You know how much dysfunction I've seen over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You had an era where the GM and the coach weren't even talking for an entire year. You had a cocaine snorting offensive line coach. You had Bullygate. You had the Jeff Ireland era. You had Ireland getting snaked by Tannenbaum.
Trust me. Well,
Parcells.
We did a podcast, and we watched a team go 3-3, losing a game that they had in hand in Cincinnati. And we look at ourselves. Any other team that's 3-3, you're not saying this, but we looked at ourselves and we said, "This team sucks."
It to me, the culture has changed. You're a franchise where you're going to have a top 5 offense. You got a quarterback. You got the best weapons in the NFL, the best duo of wide receivers, running back. Things are good. But do you have a roster that's built to win a Super Bowl? I would say no. And it's no disrespect to any player that's out there, but tell me where your dogs are. Where are your dogs? And you need dogs to win those January games. And I'm not saying that they're not going to surface, but okay, you got Jalen Ramsey. You got.
Well, I do think they've added some players though with Jordan Poyer, Calais Campbell, Odell Beckham, where there is at least some pedigree of that there, right? And Jordan Brooks is another guy that has that type of mentality. That was a lot of these moves. The skill was a good addition. I like kind of some of the mental shakeup that we're seeing with this roster. Because you mentioned the leadership. I think Calais Campbell walks in as the best leader on this team. From a leadership standpoint, he's as good as it gets in football. And Omar, you're the only person I think on the planet that will agree with me on this point. If we got to the AFC Championship, I'd rather see Patrick Mahomes on the field than the Baltimore Ravens, personally. I think that the Dolphins on their A game can play and beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay.
I think the speed of our offense can be
depends on where the game's played. Depends on where the game's played, but
I think that physical nature of the Ravens, even though we've beat them twice with Tua, I just think that physical makeup is really tough because Lamar can keep that clock running and keep that offense on the sideline. I'd rather see Mahomes than Lamar.
How can he do that too? He just
I know that Kyle and Alf are probably sitting there damn, this Neal Driscoll's a dumb son of a bitch. But the Ravens, man. I living here in Baltimore and having to deal with them.
Beat them. I'd rather, to your point, we had one of the, Tua and Waddle's jerseys are in the Hall of Fame because of a Ravens game. So, and we did that in their house. You were there. So, we have a little bit of a history of beating Lamar here and Tua outperforming Lamar. The thing is, go back to Tua's rookie season. Yeah, I know he had a great second half in that rookie season game, but we have not been able to solve, like many teams in the NFL, we have not been able to solve the KC Mahomes riddle. And that's I don't know, man. Yeah.
Well, the game in Frankfurt, the game in Frankfurt, the defense gave up 14 points.
No, Tyreek Hill lost that game single-handedly.
Oh, yeah.
Tyreek Hill, he had the drop at the 30. We got no points on that drive. Then he had the fumble at the 31, no points, and they returned it for a touchdown. If you do the math, minimum you get field goals on those. You're talking about a 13 to 21 point swing off of just 2 plays from Tyreek Hill. And then I'm not even including, remember Jalen Waddle had the reception at, the 26-28, and it got called back because of a penalty on the offensive line.
No,
I'm not even including that.
There was an illegal motion penalty on Cedric Wilson, and he wasn't moving. He was parallel to the line, and that was a conversion on 3rd and 14 to Jalen Waddle for 22 yards.
Yeah, and those are we were our own worst enemy in the first half, and then what happened? Second time we saw them, Spagnuolo made all the adjustments. We saw the great defensive mind. People can say whatever they want. I don't think.
By the way, somebody on OnlyFans put up the stat, and I thought it was interesting because I didn't think about it this way because I kept thinking to myself, man, the Dolphins seem to have a lot of first downs called back. They had 20 first downs called back for penalty. They led the league last year.
Oh, yeah. So, all right, guys. Final thoughts. Where can they find you guys? We'll just go clockwise. Neal, go ahead. Final thoughts where everyone can find you.
Fin Too Deep with Reason every Thursday. Final thoughts, man. We got a long way to go until the start of the season, but what I'll say about the Tua situation for me, right? Like, and I attribute it to having my AirPods. When I have my AirPods, right? When I had Dan Marino as my franchise quarterback, life is good. If you ever have one of these and put these in your pocket, I lose them every freaking day. When I lose them, I'm panicking, right? It feels good to have a franchise quarterback. And I understand that this is a business, right? And the Dolphins are a $5 billion company that's been in business for 58 years, and they're negotiating the biggest deal in the history of their company, right? Like, that's where we are. I just hope that they can find common ground, because the days where I've tried to convince myself that Jay Fiedler could win us the Super Bowl, right? Or Dante Culpepper was going to be the best franchise quarterback we've had, and everyone in between, I truly think that Tua already has shown signs that this guy can be a top 3 quarterback in the franchise history. And I would hate at 26 years old to lose a guy that has us heading down the right path. So I'm still optimistic. I'm kind of with where Kyle was on the timeline, that it wasn't until mid-July that we saw this Herbert deal get done. But man, I will hate to see it if we're up against the clock and this deal doesn't
Burrow
done.
didn't get done till what? September 3rd?
Burrow got done right before the start of the exhibition season, right?
Yeah,
Right.
the actual dates were Herbert July 25th and Burrow September 7th.
Training camp and then roster cut day to 50.
And Burrow was when? What day?
September 7th.
Yeah,
I knew it was
that
beginning
was
of
the start of
September.
the regular season. Yeah.
Just get it done before the start of the regular season, because I do think if they don't, it's a black eye on the organization, because the quarterback and the team are out there saying they want to get this done. You know, if you can't get it done with those three kind of those 3 timeline mesh points that we mentioned earlier, then I will start to feel a little bit nervous, because I think if he does get franchise tagged and Dak, Jordan Love, and whatever other quarterback, Lamar might say, hey, I'm a 2-time MVP. I don't like that Jared Goff's getting more. You know what I mean? Like, you could see the snowball going downhill. I just hope it doesn't get to that point.
1,520 people watching between YouTube and X right now. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Al, final thoughts, where people can find you, my friend.
Well, you can find our podcast. We're on hiatus right now. We've been on hiatus for almost 6 weeks, but we return right after July.
You got
July
through.
We return, and when we return after July 4th, we will be doing what we do every year: 2 shows a week, straight through until the end of May of next year. So, if you want to get all our stuff, it's the number 3 yards per carry. You can find our Twitter account there. All our podcasts, it's the number 3 yards per carry. If you want to become a member of our Discord, it's discord.gg/onlyfins, and you become a member there for $3 a month. Kyle actually pays me $3 a month.
It's true.
And he goes nuts.
Kyle, final thoughts and where everyone can find you, buddy.
Yeah, my recommendation this summer is stay off the roller coaster. Don't listen to the national talking heads about your team. There's a great panel of people right here and a bunch of other people that do great content covering this team that know it much better than they do and can give you plenty of good perspective as it pertains to what the Dolphins are trying to accomplish, the outlook for this season, the Tua negotiations. Although I will say, from a national perspective, Jeff Darlington's words carry a lot of weight with me. I know he's one of the best of the best, right? So, so stay off the roller coaster, right? Like let's come back when the vets report on July 23rd or whatever it is, and let's see what the state of affairs is then and there. I'm on Twitter at Grinding the Tape. I am the host of the Locked On Dolphins podcast. We're on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We do a 30-minute daily show. And I am also on Substack. I do long form written content there as well. That's titled Touchdown Miami. So that's where you can find my work.
Awesome stuff. Hey, this is the first time we've ever collabed, Kyle. It's been a pleasure. Yeah. Omar, where can people find you and your final thoughts, brother?
Omar Kelly on Twitter. I've decided not to comment to eggs anymore or
good for you.
Avatar,
I'm cleaning up my app. I'm cleaning up my my social media.
You got the Twitter street sweeper out, huh? That's what
yeah.
you got right now?
I do most of my work for the Miami. I do all of my work for the Miami Herald now. I have a podcast called Dolphins in Depth. We're building it, and hopefully we get it to the point where I could do daily stuff during training camp, give you the sights and sounds. I am working with the Miami Herald, and I promise you I'm going to get you a nice football special deal, one-time flat fee, no secret charges, one-time flat fee for the rest of the year. I'm twisting arms. to try to make that happen by training camp for you guys. It's probably not going to be offered for a while, but hopefully people could, I know it's tough to be behind a paywall, but I like my money. So I appreciate the security. And hopefully people see the value in the content that I create. For the Miami Herald this week, I've done a best camp battles. I've done giving you a breakdown of why there is this big divide in the Tua contract talks, and it's realistic. It's not that simple, and the deadlines are later, and all of us know that. And then today, I did a column on, okay, let's say Tua does want a divorce, and that can happen. Lamar asked for a trade. What are your realistic options in 2025 if you don't want to go that Tua route? And wrote a column about it. I'm sure most of you would know the options aren't that ideal.
Nope.
Like, you say whatever you want about Tua. You want to overpay Dak. You want to go trade assets for Kirk Cousins. You want to go do a dance with Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. We're going in the draft to get one of these 8 quarterbacks that could be good or maybe could not. You know what you have in Tua. Get the deal done. I'm sorry. If they put $150 million on the table and Tua doesn't take it by September, the first week of September, oh well. Yeah. Who are they bidding against? Nobody at this present moment. So, but I do believe that this can get ugly. Let's just hope that it doesn't.
Smash the like button, subscribe. If you're new, there's over 1,600 people watching now. I believe Kyle's episode with the Sideline Tea will be debuting on Saturday, and Omar is going to be hopping on with the Sideline Tea girls sooner rather than later. So make sure you go subscribe to them. Appreciate everyone for coming through, and as always, fins up, and we'll see you all in the next one, guys.